we'll get someone to explain to him what's going on, because obviously he's a little bit concerned at the moment. It's all a bit new to him, I should imagine. So all these rooms are converted. This one here is very similar to the one downstairs. Probably 70 or 80 plants in there. This room in here is obviously like the nursery. It's a proper business-like setup. This is where all that guy does is look after these plants. He doesn't do anything else. He trims them all. That's what all this is here. Encourages the head to grow. And this is his nursery here. Look, once those plants have been harvested in those rooms, these will all be spread out about amongst the house, or around the house, shall I say, for the next crop to come through. And then obviously these in here are the next batch again. Look, there's probably 100 plants in there, and probably the same in there. So that's probably about 100. That makes about 300 in this room alone.
The police reckon there are about 600 plants here, with an estimated street value of around £600,000.
Basically, sir, due to what we found in the flat, I'm arresting you for producing cannabis and stealing or abstracting electricity. You don't have to say anything, may harm your defence, do not mention in question something which you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given as evidence. Deal with that at the station. OK, we'll get your things in a moment.
Okay. He's got some shoes.
Oh, are these just want to get changed, OK?
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Gents, if you can just give this chap a bit of time to just get himself dressed.
This man was found guilty of cannabis production and received a 30-month jail sentence, after which he will face deportation. But it's not just adults who are smuggled into work in cannabis farms. Children are too. Some Vietnamese parents pay traffickers huge sums to smuggle their children into the country, but some then fall into the hands of gangs. Most victims of human trafficking are too scared to talk for fear of reprisals.
Hello, how are you? Hello.
But I found one Vietnamese teenager who will talk to me in a secret location. He was trafficked into Britain aged 15, hidden in a lorry, and then was sent to work in a cannabis factory. I've asked an interpreter along to help. So, what did you think you were coming here for? What were you told?
They said that once I got to Britain, I'd be sent to work in a nail bar. But instead, they sent me to a house where they grew cannabis.
So you were suddenly being a cannabis farmer out of nowhere. Were you allowed to leave the house?
No, not allow me leave house. Yeah.
So in the house, what were the conditions like?
There was only a small TV for me. There was no bed, only a mattress on the floor.
Oh, well, it sounds like forced labour, like slave labour.
Ban đầu thì 10 sáng, lúc sáng anh thì thích cứ trượt mắt.
After suffering hardships before I got to Britain, having a place to sleep and food to eat, it was luxury.
I think that's the saddest thing of all. I do. I think that's the saddest thing. I think the fact that you're pleased to be in Britain illegally and restrained and kept in a house, I think that is sad, you know, because it shouldn't have happened. After being released by the police, this young man was taken in and cared for by a foster family. He's now living alone in rented accommodation. You're 18 now, yeah. Right? And I know you're making a life, maybe trying to make a life for yourself here. I mean, you must be. Do you not miss your family back home? Do you not miss your mum?
At home, I only have a mother and one sister. After leaving Vietnam, I lost contact with them. I've recently found out that they went to Saigon to look for work, but I don't know where they are, and I miss them. I'd like to find them, but I'm not allowed back to Vietnam.
During the making of this programme, I've met British teenagers affected by the supply of cannabis. But I never expected someone from halfway across the world to be a casualty as well. I think I like most people in this country, my age, 25 years old, just, well, what is the harm of picking up a spliff? You know, smoking it, and you can put it down, you enjoy it, you know. If you don't do it too much, you're not going to get any harmful effects. But it never really occurred to me, as I'm sure it doesn't occur to many people out there, that where you're buying that weed is funding something, you know, and more often than not, it's going to be funding organised crime. And quite a portion of that organised crime is forcing people like that guy I just met to sit in a house for weeks, if not months on end, with no sunlight and no bed in this case. And that's a terrible thing to consider, I think. You know, it makes you look at cannabis in a different light.
Back in Bristol, the drug squad are en route to what could be another Vietnamese-run cannabis factory. Vietnamese gangs arrived in London at the start of the last decade and have slowly worked their way into most major cities in the UK. Their business model involves turning a network of ordinary suburban homes into weed farms. They enjoyed enormous success with this in Canada before moving to Britain. According to the police, for much of the last decade, 60% of UK cannabis farms were run by Vietnamese criminal gangs.
Come to the door now, it's the police!
Hello?
Police! Police officer!
Yeah, he's in here somewhere. Yeah, well, Maxie saw him at the window.
The police are convinced the cannabis gardener is inside the house. The gardeners are desperate not to be found, as they face prison and then deportation. Once they've been deported, the gang they work for will usually find them to pay back their loss in earnings.
Right, Rich? We just got another Vietnamese cannabis factory. But there's a little Vietnamese man in here somewhere. However, unfortunately, we can't find him at the moment. It looks like he might. There's holes in the floor, so he's either up in the loft or down there. Our concerns are now is for his welfare as much as anything else. If he's gone down any of these little holes, he could end up suffocating down there.
After 45 minutes, the police finally find the gardener hiding in the attic.
He does, and he's done it a million times. Yeah. So you're under arrest for suspicion of producing cannabis and for obstructing electricity. You don't have to say anything. May arm your defence. You don't mention any questions, so much you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given as evidence.
This Vietnamese man will have his fate decided in a court of law, but others aren't so lucky. In 2006, Tran Nguyen was working as a cannabis farmer in a factory in Newport in South Wales and ended up paying the ultimate price.
One night, Tran Nguyen was tending the crop in this factory, in the house. This rival crime gang broke in, tied him up. The crop was stolen. At that time, it was just ready for harvesting. It was valued at about £40,000.
The organised crime group Tran worked for didn't believe his crop had been stolen by another gang.
He was tortured by the crime gang and the crime gang leader. And then they even got his wife on the phone. They made a ransom demand of £40,000, and Tran's wife could actually hear him being beaten and literally pleading for his life, and there's nothing he could do, or she could do for that matter.
Two men carried a badly beaten Tran into the entrance of the Royal Gwent Hospital. He died shortly after from his injuries.
Tran's death led to unearthing 38 cannabis factories, and this is just a small example of what we recovered.
Tran's death turned into Gwent Police's largest ever investigation, involving 310 officers. They seized production equipment and broke up an organised crime group able to turn over £6 million a year.
It's incredible to think that as a result of the discovery of Tran and his arrival at that hospital in the state that he was in would lead to all this equipment, the unearthing of 38 cannabis factories, but more importantly, finding an organised crime group that spread across the UK, into France, Germany, Berlin, the Czech Republic, and across into Vietnam itself. We in Newport knew very little about the Vietnamese community and its connection with Newport prior to this case. But we also realised that right across the UK, there were probably other victims of this type of attack, torture, beatings, and because of the fact that most of these people are illegal immigrants, it's never coming to our notice.
Operation Viscount is still ongoing. In the first 3 months, the police busted over 7,000 plants with a street value of £6 million. The Avon and Somerset force put a high priority on fighting the supply of cannabis. I'm going to meet their head of drug strategy to find out why.
Well, I've come to talk to you today to talk about organised crime, obviously, and we know it's linked to Vietnamese gangs at times. I mean, what's the situation there?
Well, the situation here in Avon and Somerset basically reflects a national picture in that organised crime is very heavily involved in cannabis cultivation, particularly large cannabis cultivation sites, And within organised crime, the Vietnamese and Chinese are very much represented. However, now that all the other organised crime groups within the UK have realised how much money is involved, they're very heavily involved.
When you say British gangs are involved in cannabis cultivation, are we talking about people that just do it for hobbies or, you know, messing around, or are these?
No, these are the real serious criminals we're talking about. These are the same people that supply cocaine and heroin, and associated with all the violence that goes with that, gun crime, kidnap, murder. But their mainstay, their main fund would appear to be now cannabis cultivation. And there's a lot of low risk in growing cannabis compared to trying to import cocaine or import heroin.
So that 20 quid bag of cannabis someone might buy to use is actually going in the pocket of someone who involved in gun crime and murder and kidnap.
Well, absolutely, and I know an awful lot of people look at cannabis as it's just cannabis. Unfortunately, it's another illegal drug which these types of people are making an awful lot of money through.
I've seen the harm that cannabis causes for my own eyes. I never thought I'd end up meeting a victim of human trafficking, or meet young people who say they're addicted. But all the time cannabis remains an illegal drug that over 2 million people want to use, there will always be violent organised crime groups wanting to exploit this demand.
Stay with us here on BBC HD. It's EastEnders coming up next. And from 10:30, Office Comedy and its appraisal sign in Lunch Monkeys.